A warm welcome to all of you in the Darshan room at Beloved Archives, the House of the Beloved, and to all those tuned in virtually worldwide. What is happening at Beloved Archives? Many of you are visiting the archives after many years. It was primarily closed to the public because of the pandemic. And just before we all were quarantined, we extended the archives to accommodate a larger number of people and created rooms to serve our archival needs. I would like to invite all of you to tour our facilities during our lunch break. At the very outset, I would like to thank Goher Mobed, Larry Hunt, Sally Dhiram and her group of bhajan singers, Harsha Dhiram, Meher Mididoda, Kaustuba and Simmi Dhiram, and all those who've come forward to entertain the beloved. A special word of thanks to Jaisimha Mididoda and Konda Chiva for their exceptional technical help, and Mahrukh Nalawala for her selfless contribution in making the arrangements for Baba's birthday, and to Veena Bora for bringing in breakfast for all of us this morning. I would now like to share a few details of what we have been working on while in seclusion. These past 2 years, while the world waited with bated breath for the pandemic to taper, I worked on a book for which I have been collecting diaries and memoirs of those who shared Meher Baba's boyhood as Meherwan. The book is Meher Baba From Boyhood to Godhood. The publishing history of this book has been amazing. It seems that beloved Baba has had his nazar on this book that we have published. The first edition, which we published in 2021, sold out in 18 days. The second edition that we published sold out towards the end of 2022. And the third edition that we published is more or less sold out with just about 30 copies left. So if you haven't bought a copy, it's time to get one. Meher Baba dropped his body on January 31, 1969. While his body lay in state in the tomb atop Mehrabad Hill, I clutched his feet in the crypt and pledged to write his biography, and that with the help of Mani Irani and Ira Jasawala was what is known as The Beloved, the life and work of Avtar Meher Baba, which has now gone into 8 printings. So while I was in Merazad, soon after Baba dropped his body, I was living there. All the Mandli, but mainly Adi, Mani, and Irach, shared diaries, notes, letters, and manuscripts written by Baba's early disciples, most of them unpublished. When the biography, The Beloved, was published, I realized after it was published that a vital area of his life was missing, his early years as Meherwan. So I talked it over with the Mandli, particularly with Mani and with Ali Akbar Shapur Zaman, whose name is Aloba, and who was an alumnus of the Hazrat Babajan School and a former resident of Yazd. They counseled me that if I were to research the life and times of Baba's father and mystic, Shehryar Mondegar Irani, and his family, I must visit Iran. So in 1976, my mother, Freni, and I traveled to Tehran, India. From Mehrabad International Airport, we drove to the village of Kashanak and went into the home of Esfandiar and Shireen Vesali. The house was just outside the ramparts of the Niavaran Imperial Palace. Next. You see that picture of the Niavaran Imperial Palace. He was a student of Hazrat Babajan's school, and he narrated to us the uh, genocide that was faced by the Zoroastrians. I also met several people who explained to me about what the Zoroastrians had suffered about. We know of the genocide in Germany against the Jews, against the Armenians, but we don't know very much about the genocide against the Zoroastrians. And this was during the Qajar dynasty in Persia. This is a picture of Asfandyar, who is on the right, his wife Shireen, and a neighbor of theirs. So these were the people who suffered tremendously. Their sons, we met their three sons, and Iraj, Faridun, and Parviz suffered from a severe brain injury. Asfandyar suspected that Islamic zealots supposed to Meher Baba had poisoned his family, but he did not take any legal action. Mani Irani, Meher Baba's sister, her memoirs were sent to me in 1962, and the memoirs of Beli Irani, his boyhood companion, and diaries of his early disciples formed the very backbone of this narration. In Tehran, we met Zoroastrians and followers of Meher Baba. In Shiraz, we visited the tomb of the poets Hafiz and Sheikh Sadi. And then we went to Meher Baba's ancestral home in Khurramshah in Yazd. We also went to Jafrabad. But the interesting aspect of our visit was our visit to Qasimabad, a short distance away from both these places, from Khurramshah and Jafrabad. This is the entrance of the Tower of Silence, of which Shehryar was a caretaker. Would you please switch off your cell phones? Thank you. So this is a picture of the entrance of the Tower of Silence where Shehryar Mundegar Irani was a caretaker. So this is an image of the overall Tower of Silence. No one is allowed to go into these Tower of Silence, that's how the Zoroastrians dispose of their dead. So we decided that we would visit Jafrabad, where Meher Baba had visited in 1929. And that's where there was the home of Aga Baidul, one of his very close disciples. So my mother and I entered Jafrabad, and what do we discover to our horror is that nobody lives in that entire village anymore. It's been abandoned because of lack of water. Water was delivered every 2 weeks. But then we called out, Avtar Meher Baba ki Jai, Jai Baba, and out stepped these three people. But before that, we had to go to another village called Majumard village, where we met this man on the extreme right, Hassan Mirabi, who was a student of Hazrat Babajan's school. So the three of them escorted us to Aga Baidul's house. When we went into Aga Baidul's house, I thought that Aloba had mentioned that there'll be pictures of Baba all around. The whole house had completely collapsed and crumbled. There was debris everywhere, and I was very, very disappointed. I had imagined that I would see pictures of Baba and so forth. But what happened was that Baba heard my prayer. I said, Baba, please let me know that you were here during your visit in 1929. Some indication, something. And as we were about to leave, I saw a trap door under sand. So I looked at the trap door and I got extremely excited and I started tugging onto the trap door, which was covered partially with sand. And very gingerly, I put my hand in it with my mother shrieking, there might be scorpions there. And as I was trying to remove the sand, I touched upon a bunch of papers and photographs of Meher Baba. And one of the main letters that were written by Gekeshru Asfandai Rao Sahib in 1929, dated August 9, 1929, said, "You may convey the happy news to the people and residents of Iran that His Holiness Meher Baba will be arriving in Iran on the 1st of Nowruz." Yes, that was me. That's a picture of me. Yeah, that's a picture of me trying to uh, putting my hand in it. Yes, and the next picture is a picture of Baba's cousin, and she was living in the house that Shiryar lived in. This is Shiryar's house at the back. That's my mother on the right, and that's me in the middle. And next. Okay. So we came back with a lot of material, with a lot of things. And one of the, we had gone via Karachi. And the next person that you're going to listen to is Goher Mobed, who's the daughter of Minu Kharas. And while we were in Karachi, he handed over all his files and documents for us to bring them to India, and we were able to do a book from that. But after this was complete, after this book was complete and published, a number of people asked me that could you send us a copy of The Glow in 1967 or something in 1971? This is the 57th year of the publication of The Glow. So then we decided that what needs to be done is to publish a book of 50 years of The Glow. And I have been working day and night putting that together. The way the work is progressing, it will hit 700 pages. The whole book. It's a coffee table book, and the title of the book is Living the Awakened Life with Meher Baba, 50 Years of Glow International. So, and it has about 200 photographs in color. The whole book is in color. So it's going to be quite a book for posterity. Another, that is, those of course, you can read them later on over there. These are quotes by Meher Baba, Irija Sawala, Francis Brabazon about the glow. And this is actually the cover of the book, the actual cover of the book. So this entire area will be embossed. So Baba's picture will be embossed deep inside the cover, and this is how the cover will look of this book. So now we come to one of the exciting things that happened to us last year. And that was we connected with the Princeton University Arts Museum. And we asked them Could you sell us some of your old glass display cabinets? And they said, no, we don't sell them. We just donate them. So they donated 5 glass display cabinets to us, and I would uh, later on during lunch, I'll be happy to show you around our museum. So these are some of the things. This is an original master's prayer that was dictated by Meher Baba in Dehradun and typed up by my father. And this was a copy that my father typed with corrections by Irat Jasawala. This is Meher Baba's board that he used from 1939 to 1941, which is on the right. And on the left is a Meher Baba's board in Braille that he used just once in Dehradun when he went to visit a blind school. This one is on the left is Hazrat Baba Jan's hair, and on the right is Meher Baba's hair. And this has a whole history behind it. And this is a letter on the left written by Meher Baba's mother, Shireen Mai, in Gujarati. And on the right is a letter written in 1923 by Merwan to Rustam Irani, one of his disciples. This is Meher Baba's God Speaks, signed by him, which is also preserved in the museum. These are Baba's sandals that he wore in the 1940s that have been preserved. That box that you see below is we've kept silicone gel to preserve the humidity on the sandals. That's it. And this is just a picture of both of you having a look at the museum. This is okay. Now today, I am going to share with you for the next 20 minutes. It's a little heavy, but it's very important to the work that we do in Beloved Archives. Over several years, I have been conducting meditation sessions. The last one we conducted was Awakening the Divinity Within, which was followed all over the world. I have devised a practical meditation method with the acronym ORBIT, O-R-B-I-T. As we come closer into Meher Baba's orbit, this is an easy to remember tool for creating a sense of divinity and compassion during times of anxiety and fear. It is entirely based on the factors that face our lives on a daily basis. This is a meditation practice based on Meher Baba's teachings, with reflections I have honed over time. Today, since we don't have much time, I will present a very brief version for the very first time. As we go along, it'll be the meditation session, the way I've devised it, will be for 5 days. And each day will be reflections on the word orbit. So may I request all of you at the outset, I would like you to sit with your eyes closed and bring in your presence a person who's had the greatest impact on your life, a personal companion with whom you would like to traverse the spiritual journey. This is not an actual meditation, it's just a glimpse. Let us close our eyes and sit in silence. Take a moment to steady your posture. It is important to be comfortable and relaxed as you arrive at the center of your practice. You are now ready to experience complete silence, the very core of meditation, stillness. Take a deep breath, hold it, and then let it flow. Normally, when we do meditation, this is a lot longer. Feel the sensation of your breath and take a moment to think, what is my intention of being here today? Why am I here? Your answer should be, I'm here to see things as they are without being judgmental. We are here to simply awaken to God's love and feel His presence. The most significant lesson I have learned from my master, Avtar Meher Baba, is that reality must be realized and the divinity of God must be attained and lived. Indeed, the whole purpose of a life is to make God a reality. Now, you're probably wondering, what does orbit stand for? O for observe. Understand that you're awakened to divinity within. R, reality. God alone is the only reality. B for being. Desire to be one with God. I, intuition. Recognize your intuitive state of being. T, teaching. Be in a state of constant awareness. The first one is observe. Our minds are always caught by some sort of attachment. You free yourself from one and get tethered to another. The grip of illusion gets tightened in your very attempt to loosen it. It can be unfastened in a flash of a second, or it may not be loosened at all, even after several lifetimes. The deception of illusion continues until you're awakened and learn to recognize the divine beneath this play of illusion. As human beings, we believe that we are analytical with the ability to discern the truth. This is often a power play of the ego. Meher Baba's close disciple and companion Erich, would often tell seekers, it is true, but at the same time, it isn't the whole truth. We are here today because each one of us is awakened to Meher Baba's divinity. He has made us conscious of our divinity as well, the divine within us. Consequently, in our awakened state, we are now able to put words in our thoughts and feelings in moments of anxiety when faced with unnatural situations. I feel so insecure. I feel so inadequate. I feel so very powerless. Oftentimes, we do not even know where these feelings come from and often impact our bodies and minds. But because we are awakened to God's love, we can observe these feelings, examine these feelings, and work on them. And we can dispel them. This practice of overcoming negative and destructive feelings then becomes a habit. We start to develop an inner voice that is sometimes critical and judgmental. But that critical voice helps to clear the scum that has surfaced on our conscious selves. Very often we hear reports from people who go to Meher Baba's tomb in Upper Mehrabad, bow down at his tomb, and suddenly find that all their negativities have come up on the surface as scum on dirty water. The next one is reality. God alone is the only reality. This physical life of ours is indeed a reality. It is the truth. As the world and all its experiences are illusory, so is the spiritual path that leads to reality. The world may be termed as false illusion, and the reality of the spiritual path as real illusion. False illusion, real illusion. Nevertheless, despite the vast difference between them, they are both illusions, for God alone is the only reality. The conviction in the fullness of our innate divinity is the greatest gift to humanity. As a result, We become aware of our shortcomings. We then develop the ability to exercise constant control over our low desires. That is a measure of success in our spiritual growth. Meher Baba explained about the process of sublimation of all desires. Sublimation of all desires. A timeless gift by the avatar on our spiritual journey. But the greatest gift is the practiced ability of burning away of all of one's desires once and for all, which divine alone can do. Truth is beyond the limits of the mind. The mind creates a plethora of obstacles and whispers in our ear, I cannot devote myself to God. I have my family to look after. I have my job. I have my children. What will my peers think of me? This mental conundrum goes on and on till you find yourself far, far away from truth and deeper into the area of illusion. Simply a victim of our external attachments, your wants and desires. While truth is simple and natural and God is real, illusion makes your life difficult and miserable. This is where silence steps in. The moment we sit in silence to meditate, we immediately come down to earth and begin the process of letting go. Soon our minds get calmer, as do our bodies. We are awake and aware. We are awake and aware. When we sit in silent meditation, we investigate the source of our suffering and begin to recognize the attributes of God: compassion, love, mercy, forgiveness, and all that is joyous and beautiful. Intuition. Recognize your intuitive state of being. Meher Baba tells us that this is the age of intuition. Intuition taps the soul deep within and helps us distinguish right from wrong. It helps us become our normal, natural self and work with the world selflessly. We term this state as mindful divinity. As we self observe our state of being, we become mindful of it and experience our intuitive state of divinity. Soon we can unwind the knots of our unwanted thoughts and feelings and learn to accept our self worth. We soon become loving, compassionate, living in the forefront of intuitive blessings and grace. Intuitive blessings and grace. And the last one is teaching. Be in a state of constant awareness. In the years after leaving India, and even more so after Meher Baba dropped his physical form, I found my attention centered more internally in trying to fathom the deeper meaning of being constantly in a state of conscious awareness. If I am an awakened being, should I also be constantly aware? Then during a visit to India and to Meherazad, where Meher Baba's Mandli lived, I had an opportunity one day to discuss the concept and practice of being always aware with Erich. During our discussion, he suddenly got up from his seat, went to his cabin desk, and taking out a sheet of paper, read the following words of Meher Baba. Awareness is a great help to me in my work. These words of Meher Baba triggered a deep-seated understanding within of being constantly aware of his divinity. Meher Baba tells us that the human form is fettered and limited by the accumulation of endless ego impressions gathered over a period of innumerable births and deaths. Awareness, Meher Baba explains, would be the breaking or wearing down of these fetters and bindings. Baba wants us to become more aware. In fact, awareness is a precious gift from him. When Meher Baba dropped his physical form, he became more available to everyone, everywhere, because he was no longer limited to his form. Even before dropping his physical form, Meher Baba encouraged his followers to find him within themselves, not to rely on his form. Now we must all seek to find him within, for that is the true source of awareness. The more we can be alert to his presence within, the more intuition grows and the more awareness of his one reality expands. Meher Baba sowed the seed of awareness in our hearts. He is the divine gardener who will see that the seed grows and eventually bears fruit. Jai Meher Baba. If any of you would like for me to send emails when we have these meditation sessions, please mention it against your name in the register at the back. And please don't forget to write your details. A few minutes ahead of time, I now turn to introducing Goher Mobed. I would like to welcome Goher Mobed, the daughter of Meher Baba's close disciple, Minu Kharas. Goher was born to Freni and Minu, one of Avatar Meher Baba's close disciples. She had the rare privilege of being named by Meher Baba himself and spent childhood filled with stories, experiences, and teachings of Meher Baba through the life of her father Minu, narrated in his biography, The God Seeker. This book was published by Beloved Archives and is available in the book room. She met Meher Baba for the first time in 1962 at the East-West Gathering in Pune and again in 1965 at Guru Prasad, Pune. Minu's diaries, beautifully written over a period of time, featured in the book. They tell a compelling story of lessons learned following Meher Baba. Goher will narrate today a few stories both from her life with the beloved and tales of her father's life of following the avatar. Goher Mobed.
Jai Baba, everyone. Jai Baba. A most loving and happy birthday to our most darling beloved Baba and to all of you as we share this wonderful day, this auspicious day together. I would like to thank Naosherwan for asking me to be the keynote speaker today. And although I'm not adept at talking publicly a lot, I will try to do my best to share with you my life and journey and my father's life and journey with beloved Baba. So along the way, I will illustrate with pictures certain events that took place as he went along in his journey. And I will start by talking about his childhood, the incredible journey which finally brought him to Baba, and his training in discipleship, followed by his family life and life in service of Baba in Karachi. So to begin with, my story, of course, is related to Baba is in relation to my father, Minu. And Minu was one of Baba's closest disciples in his circle of 120. To those of you...
we can't see her on the screen.
Now you can.
Okay, so are we good? Yeah, okay. As the story of his life unfolds, it becomes more than evident that all his experiences were propelling him to his inevitable meeting with God. As a small child, he recalls ever since memory first began, he experienced intense feelings and longing for God, wondering if God really existed, and if so, in what form and where, and why could he not see him with his own eyes? He was determined not only to find him, but become one with him in this very lifetime. All these intense thoughts and feelings without anyone ever having spoken a word to him about it. His youth was a period of both elation and frustration, culminating in a determination to die by his own hand if his lifelong desire to see God face to face did not materialize. He remained convinced that one day in this very lifetime, he would ascend to the spiritual height required to find God. He was further convinced that God would, quote unquote, take me along with him unto him. So, as a child living with his elderly parents who came from a very humble background, he was badly neglected until his eldest sister took him under her wing when she married into a wealthy family. Under her care, as a young scholar, he excelled in all areas of academia, sports, elocution, debating, and scouting. Nevertheless, she was a hard taskmaster who continually demanded the very best performance from him, and if he didn't deliver, was severely reprimanded. Therefore, at this tender age, he lacked the maternal nurturing which he craved, and which was a key factor that drove him away from her care eventually. As a young man, Minu kept up his search for God, looking for him everywhere and in everything, and inquiring of those who he felt might be able to help him in his search and satisfy his longing, but to no avail. It all appeared to be a wild goose chase. Deeply frustrated, he even turned to nature and took himself out into the open fields or to the seashore, where he found himself talking with God as if up in the firmament, and felt blissfully happy doing so. This soon became a habit, and along with his deep conviction, he was certain that one day in this very lifetime, God would appear to him in human form. And here's a picture of Minu with Baba and Iraj Jasawala in the background. Running parallel to this intense longing for God, Minu was also in the grip of the usual common pull of lust, which assails most young people, and which in his case went largely unchecked, so that the devil had a free hand. The dreadful habit of self-abuse continued unabated for a number of years, and soon all his outstanding qualities and intelligence were negatively affected. Without proper guidance, he seemed a lost soul. To further complicate matters, he also equally felt the pull of physical love, which manifested itself at an early age when he found himself, in all innocence, declaring his love to a married relative lady at a tender age of 7. She reciprocated by nurturing him as one of her own, and soon this bond became a deep and lasting relationship. Needless to say, this created a great deal of conflict within the family as the years went by, but Minu remained unaffected by any negative repercussions, and his love for this relative lady grew in fervor and intensity. In his own words, this intense feeling of love was like a hidden volcano, propelled by some mysterious force of past lives, which neither of them could fathom. It defied all human comprehension. Thus, we see this amazing tug of war between the intense search for God on the one hand and the equally strong pull of the lust-love feeling on the other. To add another aspect to this realm of lust and physical love, Minu states that as a child, in more than one occasions, an unnatural physical offense was attempted on him by more than one person. But in spite of these disturbing episodes, he always felt he was protected by some invisible supernatural power. With this background, we can only imagine the conflicting emotions and frustrations which were surging through him, but which eventually propelled him onward and, together with a series of unforeseen circumstances, brought him to the threshold of beloved God. Now, Minu had 4 friends who were also spiritually inclined. Together, they made a pact to search for God, each taking a different direction. And should any one of them find him, he would then inform the others. Minu's ardent search for God led him down many different paths, including visiting holy shrines, temples, churches, mosques, and crossing paths with various sages, saints, sadhus, and yogis. But none of this brought him any closer to finding his God. His faith and determination remained strong, however, until one day when a man who displayed wonderful occult and psychic powers attempted to commit an unnatural offense on him. And he finally managed to escape after a fearsome struggle. This episode so disillusioned him that he vowed to make one last attempt, and if he failed, was committed to ending his life by his own hand. He was convinced that if God were indeed only hiding and was who he said he was, and knowing the depth of his love and conviction to find him, then it would be God himself who would come to his rescue
Participants, if they want to,
and spare his life.
I mean, they can unmute and.
Otherwise, sorry, should I wait? Otherwise, we're good. Okay. So he was determined to end his life if this last attempt was not working out. So a clear note was sounded to God, and on the appointed day, without informing anyone, he quietly slipped out to that location, which was outside the limits of the city. Either his life would end, or by some miracle, he would be saved. Midnight was the appointed hour, and he fully expected and was ready for the former outcome.
18, 18, the total number of people on the online.
Sorry, I'm getting a disturbance, so I thought I would just mention that. Okay. So here we are, he's at the outskirts of the city. However, most miraculously and unexpectedly, one of his 4 friends comes running up the hill and finds him in the nick of time, and after repeated efforts manages to take him away from that awful place. His friend stated that he had been instructed by a yogi of a high order to find Minu and bring him. Even though this yogi had not found God himself, he would be instrumental in leading Minu further in his search. Pleasantly surprised, Minu found he recognized this elderly yogi who lived next to the graveyards as being a teacher at his old school. He also discovered that he had been under the protection of this yogi, who in one of his nightly samadhis, meaning deep meditations, had seen the impending tragedy to befall Minu and had tactfully but forcefully sent his friend to find Minu and had inwardly guided him to the exact spot. This, I think, is one of the many unusual circumstances that shaped Minu's destiny. Minu kept a close association with this yogi, whose name was Master Ramsundar Pandey, and felt blissful and happy in his company. The yogi said he had found a great soul, quote unquote, in Minu, whose last few lives had been unnecessarily lost. He would insist on Minu performing japa, which is silent recitation of certain mantras, which he said would henceforth protect his life from such dangers as snake bites and gunshot wounds. He also gave Minu a sacred thread, which Minu was to keep on his person and which would further protect him from all evil forces and save his life, cautioning Minu not to take any of this lightly. Minu mutely obeyed the yogi, although not fully understanding why, but felt instinctively that there was some supernatural power guiding him in his quest. He had also been an avid scholar of books on spirituality, and one day was overjoyed to discover in one called Kabir Vani by the acclaimed poet and perfect master Kabir Sahib that God does appear in human form during certain spiritual periods. At last he had found God, if only yet in a book. This finding fit like a glove when he further discovered that this was one of those times. During this period, another curious thing happened. Suddenly, in the course of a single day, Minu set about collecting images of all the known prophets of history, beginning with Zoroaster, Ram, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, and ending with the late mayor of Karachi, who was then a gentleman by the name of Jamshed Nasrwanji, and who was his ideal in life. He had all these framed and mounted them at the head of his bed, calling it the ladder of ascent, beginning with his ideal at the bottom and continuing upwards to Lord Zoroaster at the top. He was convinced that one day he would rise to the required height to find God. This curious event also played a significant part in his quest, as we will see. So one day this yogi told him he would soon be doing parade. This did not make any sense to Minu, who was working in an insurance company at the time. But this prediction soon came true as Minu found himself bound for training as a student at the Central Police School in Nasik. When departing Karachi by ship, the old yogi came to see him off on the docks, garlanding Minu and bowing down to him. How very strange, thought Minu. Pandey then told him that in Nasik he would encounter a very holy man in a certain direction from the school, and that Minu should not leave him at any cost. Little did he dream how important this prediction would prove to be. Two events which occurred consecutively upon his arrival at the police training school illustrate the importance of Minu's association with the yogi Pandey in Karachi, and further prove it was divinely orchestrated. On the very first evening of his arrival, around sunset, he walked out into the fields a little distance from the school to have his usual talk with God, as was his practice. And he was sitting on a boundary marked stone. At the same time, one of the officers of the school was trying out a new gun at a good distance, and thinking Minu to be a good target, began unwittingly firing in his direction. Some servants of the school, including a barber, witnessed this near catastrophe and immediately ran to him in a panic, but found that miraculously he was unharmed. Minu wondered if the mantras he had been repeatedly assigned by the yogi had indeed protected him from gunfire. The next morning, that same barber, upon entering Minu's room on his usual rounds to attend to the needs of the students, recognized him from the previous evening and noticed the ladder of ascent on the wall. Observing Minu to be spiritually inclined, thought he would be a total misfit at the school, and indeed, instead, raising his hand and pointing in a certain direction, suggested that he go and see a certain holy man who was then residing at the Circle Cinema on Bombay-Agra Road. Upon hearing this, Minu remembered with a shock the prediction of the old man Pandey. He was further shocked to know the identity of this holy man as Meher Baba. And he remembered coming across that name several years ago. It so happened that during his school matriculation exam, while staying at his aunt's house, he had come across a magazine called Hindi Graphic, and this was placed in the lavatory as toilet paper. And on the cover of this magazine was a photo of a holy man with the caption, His Holiness Shri Meher Baba. This was in 1928. And it was during this period that Minu was at the height of his frustration and considering all so-called saints, sages, and holy men as nothing short of cheats and rogues. Even so, he did not appreciate the idea of the photo of a man said to be holy to be kept in a toilet. So he tore off the cover with the photo and kept it in a folded sheet of blotting paper and promptly forgot about it. The next day, on his way to the examination, he realized he had forgotten to wear his kasti, which, as a devout Zoroastrian, did not have, which is a sacred thread worn by every devout Zoroastrian. But he did not have time to return home for it. During the exam, a curious thing happened when a small piece of paper slipped off his desk to the floor, and out of it fell the photo of Meher Baba. Thus, this Meher Baba had accompanied him to the exam, while with all the zeal of a religious Zoroastrian, he had forgotten to wear his kasti. A second incident occurred while playing a game of billiards with some friends, when out of the blue, one of them mentioned this Meher Baba had stopped in Karachi on his way to Bombay from Iran. Minu wanted to immediately rush off to meet him at the docks, but was told he had already sailed. Reflecting on these recollections from the past, and now coupled with the prediction of the yogi and the information of the close proximity of Meher Baba, as informed by the barber, Minu was determined to go and see this man, Meher Baba, face to face. Minu writes, January 17, 1932 was the happiest day of my life. Like a warrior of old setting out fully armed to fight for his country, he set out fully armed for his holy expedition. He dressed himself in his usual white garments with a locket containing a small photo of Lord Zoroaster around his neck and the red holy thread given by the yogi in his inside pocket, and a sandalwood mala, which is a religious rosary for prayers. Thus he felt secure and fully prepared. Upon arrival at the compound that Sunday morning, he was met by 3 disciples, Ramju, a Muslim, Vishnu, a Hindu, and Dadachanji, a Zoroastrian, one after another. When asked who he was and the purpose of his visit, to each he replied, I am a pagal, meaning a madman, come from Karachi to meet a similar type of elder pagal, who I understand is staying here. Although he realized these words sounded idiotic to them, he felt convinced that they would internally convey to Meher Baba if he really was holy and the silent and hungry heartbeats of a true seeker. Within minutes, the man called Meher Baba suddenly came out and stood just before, a few feet away. Minu notes, he appeared young, strongly built, strikingly handsome, and clean-shaven. His lovely hair flowed down to his shoulders. His mustache was full, his eyes were fascinating, and above all, he had a broad, charming, unforgettable smile on his radiant face. He wore a long white robe-like garment with a hip-length collared coat of cream color, and he was holding a small wooden board. Then and there, Minu felt a deep voice inside him saying, Minu, here is God whom you have been searching for. From that moment of spontaneous joy and bliss, Minu knew his search had ended. Calling him into a room while seated on a mat on the floor and with the disciple Chanji on his right, Baba asked Minu what he wanted. While keeping perfectly silent and fixing his gaze on Baba, Minu addressed him from within, very silently, emptying out all of his pent-up frustrations while telling Baba that if indeed he was who he said he was, would know all this and be able to satisfy his inner cravings. Astonishingly, using his alphabet board and via his disciple Chanji, Baba said, quote, I have heard you completely. It is since your birth that this instinct is there within you. Don't worry. Do as I say. Forget I. Every night go to sleep in thoughts of me. quote unquote. Then began the verbal dialogue where Minu unburdened himself with all the good and bad that he had experienced since memory began and in his long search for God. He fearlessly told Baba about meeting the old yogi and showed him a picture, then began disarming himself of all his spiritual paraphernalia. And this is another photo. This photo was taken, of course, in Portofino, Italy, but it happens to be one of my favorite photos. And it is absolutely relevant here because this is how Baba looked exactly at the time of Minu meeting him for the first time in 1932. So they began their verbal dialogue. He fearlessly told Baba about meeting the old yogi and showed him a picture and then began disarming himself of all his spiritual paraphernalia, confessing to all these childish things. Immediately, Baba replied, "This is not childish. It is this that has brought you to me." He further stated, "You are connected with me since past lives. I have to repay the debt I owe you. Not only you love me, but I love you." Unquote. At the end of this momentous meeting, Minu left with feelings that were indescribable. He was totally convinced he had at last found his very own God and the Savior and Messiah that the world desperately needed. He realized all his efforts to this day had not been in vain, and the true significance of all experiences to this point. He found himself recalling incidents from his childhood, which had seemed previously inexplicable to him. For instance, when he was a young child, the old African night watchman who guarded the house at night told him that around midnight, when he was fast asleep, God often came and sat beside his bed and actually caressed him. The watchman vividly described the appearance and dress of this being he felt to be God in human form. The description exactly matched that of Baba during his first meeting in Nasik. Furthermore, he learned years later that Baba was actually present in Karachi at that time and was staying only a few houses away. So he also recollected that when visiting certain sages or holy ones as a child, as when he was in the presence of the renowned theosophist Krishnamurti, the sage looked at him with great reverence and took hold of his hands and placed them on his eyes and kissed him, then placed his hand on Minu's head with tears running down his face. Without a doubt, all these experiences and his entire life to this point had been a prelude of events and circumstances that brought Minu to the feet of his master. He was blissfully happy that from here on through eternity, he would have his own God with him every step of the way. But this was only the beginning, and Minu realized he had to go a long way yet to know Baba as he really is, to experience his ways and to learn to obey him 100%, if he hoped to earn his grace in order to overcome all the obstacles in his path. So after this initial meeting, Minu could hardly keep away from Baba. He would be in his company as much as possible. He would run away from his school and be with Baba, and Baba would look at certain times and say to him, how come you're here at this hour? And Minu would say, "It's all up to you, Baba. You know best." So Baba says, "Don't worry, I have you. I am with you always." So it was at this time that Baba first gave Minu the order to read well, and then said, "When I feel in the twinkling of an eye, I shall lift you up. Don't worry. I promise you I take your responsibility." So thus Baba had not directly addressed yet Minu's his consuming problem that he had, the big hurdle that he had to overcome with lust. But in 1933, at a birthday celebration of Baba, he openly referred to this in front of all. And Baba said, of Minu, quote, "He is perfect from top to toe, but his eyes are very bad." This open hint opened the door to future direct guidance by the master, who helps each one eliminate the blocks to perfection. Minu's training had begun in earnest, and along the way, he learned many new lessons, such as implicit obedience. Once, after inadvertently and in good faith disobeying a wish of the beloved, Baba ordered him to go away in front of all. Minu was crushed by this sudden rejection, not understanding the reason for his dismissal, and inwardly begged his forgiveness. When called back sometime later, he realized his mistake in not obeying Baba when told to go and have his lunch at a certain time. This was a very small, insignificant thing, but with Baba, nothing is insignificant. So by this, he learned his lesson of implicit obedience. And from then on, he made no mistakes. During his stay in Nasik, Minu had the privilege of Baba's company, often as part of the mandli, taking part in games such as marbles, cricket, carom, ping pong, and cards. But this was also a period of suffering for Minu, who was deeply agonized at certain intervals when Baba was touring in the West or away for other reasons. And then he also had physical ailments and such, and he suffered from time to time with acute appendicitis. But in the end, he left everything in Baba's hands in total surrender. So when Minu returned to Nasik in 1933, Baba began integrating him into the mandli and gave him the assignment of contacting the former mayor of Karachi, who also had been Minu's ideal, Naosherwan. At this time, Minu was also struggling with feelings of anxiety at being separated from Baba, thinking that even if he passed his exams, he would have to leave Nasik and Baba. But Baba reassured him all would be well, even after he got a job, which he would be able to leave if Baba called him. "Today, I'm giving you a master key, which note carefully," Baba said. "He who always loves is in me, but he who engages in lust keeps away from me. Be very, very careful. If you really desire to be near and with me, avoid lust. As soon as you are dragged heavily by lust, close your eyes and try to concentrate on the root of the nose between the two eyes and think of me. Do not do this for long." He further stated, "Love lifts a man up, while passion or lust drags him down below. Do not worry for being lifted up by love. Worry for being pulled down by lust. It follows that if you are not pulled down, you will automatically be pulled up." Baba also said this struggle was an eternal one, and one could hardly escape it on one's own unless he had the hand of a living master on his head to free him from it. But when Minu protested, saying how yogis of a high order had failed in this respect, what hope did he have to overcome it? To which Baba replied that he had to make the initial effort and then be worthy of his grace. In March 1933, Minu was present at the wedding of Baba's brother Behram. And after speaking a few words spontaneously on the occasion, Baba enjoyed and appreciated. He presented Minu his alphabet board. And Minu gave the one he had made, which he used during his time of observing silence, to Baba. Yeah, so these are the two boards that I today have in my possession. I am so blessed to have this in my possession. These were the boards that Baba used in the early 30s, I believe. The one on top was given to me by my father to keep, and the one on the bottom was sent to me years later after my brother had passed away by my sister-in-law. So I am deeply, deeply honored to have these wonderful remembrances of Baba in my possession. So after passing his final exams at the police training school in Nasik, Minu was appointed the job of sub-inspector of police in Karachi and was ordered by Baba to accept the position. There would now be a gap of 4 years when Minu had no physical contact with Baba, but would remain connected via letters from the Mandli and sometimes even from Baba. Finally, he received a letter from Adi Senior, Baba's secretary, informing him that Baba's wish that he be present at his birthday celebration to be held on February 17th and 18th in 1937. Overjoyed to attend this, so this was the picture of Baba's birthday celebration in Nasik in 1937, his 38th birthday. And you will see Minu, let's see, 4 people from the left. There he is poking his head out, standing right behind Baba at this celebration. And Baba's mother is standing right next to him. And then Gulamai, who was Baba's spiritual mother, is in the center of the photo. So, all right, so to continue, so he was overjoyed to attend this auspicious occasion. Minu was witness to more than 10,000 who were present, and these were the poor to whom Baba distributed cloth, sweetmeats, and grain, and touched their feet. Minu was sent with some Mandli members to the Mast Ashram in Rahuri. That's it. Okay. Let's see, the Masts in Rahuri. So Baba had different ashrams for them, and at this time, the ashram was in Rahuri. And this was a particular phase of Baba's life where he did a lot of his spiritual work through these God-intoxicated souls. And Minu was there to observe the different types of musts or these God-intoxicated souls and their peculiar habits. So, so this was then. So this was, Minu was privileged to be assigned to them as a way of helping the master with this work. He did some must work for Baba as well, which I will come to later. And especially during the dark years of World War II, Baba did a lot of work through these musts. In June of 1947, Baba gave Minu and some other Mandli members of the mission of trying to find musts in their own districts and bring them to the newly founded Mast Ashram in Satara. So one was in Rahuri and there was another ashram in Satara. Never having undertaken such a daunting task previously, Minu was naturally quite nervous. But eventually, being determined to fulfill Baba's wish, he managed the laborious and challenging undertaking and completed the mission successfully in transporting 3 musts from Karachi in spite of numerous hurdles and complications. You know, these folks can be very difficult to handle at times because of their peculiarities and their way of living and being around people. So this was a daunting task, to say the least. But he managed to do it successfully and to bring 3 musts to Baba as asked. After staying for 2 days, Baba asked Minu to take the must back to their old surroundings. By the way, Baba was very happy about the fact that Minu successfully completed this mission because he had asked other Mandli members to do the same, but they had failed in this regard. And he said to Minu at this time, he hugged him when he left and said, "You are one of my most intimate Mandli." During 1947, while trying to organize a group in Karachi, Minu met Kekashu Patel and his family, one of whom was his daughter, Freni. They soon developed a friendship that blossomed into a deeper relationship, and eventually, with Baba's permission and emphasizing his wish 3 times that they marry, they finally tied the knot in February 1954. So now we come to the physical phase of Minu's life in Karachi. At first, so this is my mother, a picture of my mother when she first met Baba and garlanding him at one of the savasas. And I believe this picture is probably not the first time she met him, but it is the time when I was in her tummy. So this was my actual first visit with Baba, I suppose, but while still being in the womb. So he meets Freni, they get married in February of 1954. At first, Minu's involvement with Freni caused much friction in his relationship with his lady friend, who was openly rebellious at the intrusion of this young interloper. But over time and after the marriage, she eventually accepted the union and life was harmonious then. In December of that year, yours truly made my debut into the family. And as with every event in his life, Minu right away sent off a cable to Baba informing him of my birth and requesting him to name me. At the time, Baba was in strict seclusion. Therefore, all mail was collectively put aside. Hence, I was nameless for a period of 5 months. My maternal grandparents were naturally concerned and upset, but Minu stuck to his guns and just waited patiently to come in complete trust and serenity. Finally, after 5 months, in April of 1955, due to a tragic accident, when news reached Baba regarding the sad demise of Adi and Rhoda Dubash's young son, Homi, age 4, Baba briefly came out of seclusion, and that was when all the collected mail was brought to his attention, including Minu's letter. So Baba called the women Mandli, and first, pointing to Meera, said, "Now there are too many that have been given your name." Then he said the same to his sister Mani. Next was Dr. Goher Irani, his personal physician. So he asked her if it would be okay to send her name. Dr. Goher replied, "As you wish, Baba." Baba said, "So be it." Hence, that day, April 21st, 1955, Baba had, this is my namesake, of course, Dr. Goher. So in April of that year, Baba had Irich write and inform Minu that, quote, "Today, Baba has named your daughter Goher." This is the letter I still have with me, which came from Irich and my father's markings all over the place to be given to me when I was older. So another treasured relic that I cherish, this letter, of course. After almost 6 years, my brother was born in November 1960. And somehow the news had already reached Baba, who immediately sent a postcard naming him Meherji. My first physical meeting with beloved Baba came in 1962. Okay, so I'll skip forward a little bit and tell you about this picture. So after a few months in 1955, I believe it was September, that Minu had another meeting with Baba in Mehrabad. And he took this picture of me when I was about 6 or 7 months, I presume. And he showed it to Baba. "Baba, this is Goher." Baba took the picture in his hand and he gently rocked me back and forth. So that touch picture is also one of my treasured possessions. So, okay. So to continue, my first physical meeting with beloved Baba came in 1962 at the East-West gathering held in Pune. I was almost 8 years old at the time, and I distinctly recall the excitement building up in me at the thought that I would be meeting him in person. On November 1st, 1962, I found myself at the gates of Guru Prasad Palace, among thousands who had come from all over India and the West to partake of this joyous event. I remember thinking to myself as I walked to the back of the compound that as I turn around, all I want to see is Baba. And sure enough, as I turned around, there he was in all his glory, beaming pure radiance. I was lost in a timeless moment. I watched as Baba gave darshan to thousands, one by one, bowing down and touching his feet. I recall the intense heat and humidity, and then, all of a sudden, in the afternoon, the skies opening up with a tremendous thunder shower and drenching all of us nearer to the stage. Baba then instructed the Western and some of us Eastern women and children to be taken into the women's monthly quarters and be given some dry clothing. Hence, I found myself inside with the ladies, and Baba's sister Mani very sweetly gave me one of her dresses to change into. Subsequently, after we returned home to Karachi, Mani sent me this dress as a memento of that auspicious day, which is yet another one of my treasured possessions. And a few years later, when about, I would say 30 years later, when I traveled with my own family to Baba's tomb in Mehrabad and met the Mandli, I took this dress along with me, and I actually wore it because in 1962, I was all of 3 feet tall, you see, and the dress was like way long on me. And now I actually fit into it. So I wore it just to show Mani that this was such a treasured gift from her. So there I am meeting Mani. So Baba also called our Karachi group on certain days for his darshan in the small side room. And I recall the first time standing in line with Dad and peeking out from the side to catch a glimpse of him as we progressed forward. Finally, it was my turn. And this was the first time I was directly in his presence. I kneeled and lay my head on his feet, touching my forehead on each one while gently holding them, never wanting to let go. When I finally stood up, I was in his loving embrace. Yet another timeless moment. The rest of the afternoon was spent sitting silently at his feet while he conversed with some, and I recall Dad whispering in my ear to keep my gaze on him and drink in every drop so that, quote unquote, this memory will last you a lifetime. The next and last physical meeting I had with beloved Baba came in 1965 when he had the darshan for the Easterners only. This time when I stood up after taking his darshan, he gestured, "How big you have grown." When my brother Mirji, who was not yet 5 years, bowed down to Baba, he just stayed there for a while and had to be coerced to get up. The ladies' Mandli had been observing this from behind the scenes and remarked how lucky he was. And this is a photo of my father and mother and my little brother Mirji, because in 62, after the darshan was over, Baba came out and was driven around the grounds of Guru Prasad to see the lights and so forth. And my parents were still standing there with my brother. I had been sent home with somebody else, I suppose. And so this photo was taken very spontaneously then. So our family also attended the last darshan in April 1969 at Mehrabad, along with others from the Karachi group. Minu was a volunteer guide once more, and I recall when we approached the hill at Mehrabad after the Pune Savas, we were all taken to Mehrabad to Baba's tomb. On the bus, Minu jumped up and shouted, "Parvardigar, Meher Baba ki jai," 3 times. We were housed under huge tents that had been set up in Lower Mehrabad for the duration of the darshan program. Thousands had once again journeyed from all corners of the globe to partake of this special time at the feet of their beloved. So at this point, I will add some other stories that my father would relate often. Our house in Karachi was the Baba Center. Minu was the one to initiate the Baba Center in Karachi. And we were a group of, I would say, about 35 or 40 souls that were devoted to Baba at the time. And every 25th of the month, we would gather at our home for a Baba meeting. And we would first start the meeting by saying the prayers, the Master's Prayer and the Repentance Prayer. Then Minu or someone else would give a talk on a certain topic, or we would discuss news from the other parts of the Baba world. And then we would end with either songs or some refreshments. And this happened once a month. And I always looked forward to these meetings because Minu, inevitably quoted so many of his experiences with Baba at that time and told so many wonderful stories. And I'll share a few of them because they relate to either the topic of obedience and faith. So the first story is on the topic of here we go. Yes, on the topic of obedience. So this goes back to 1941, when Baba was in strict seclusion and had told all of his close mandli that he was only there with a few of them and was touring, and the others had been sent to their various homes. But they were told in the strongest terms that even if inevitably they came across him, they had to turn around and shield their eyes away and not look at him. No contact was permitted at that time. Now, Minu was going through a tough time at this stage, he quotes, and he was experiencing many frustrations, many difficulties. And he thought to himself, he wanted to go and take a dip into the Ganges River to purify himself. So with the aid of his being with the police in Karachi at that point, it was very difficult. This was in the year 1941 while the World War was raging. So it was virtually impossible for him to make this journey. However, he did end up coming to Delhi under some very strange circumstances, peculiar circumstances that brought him there. And he was at the Delhi railway station when all of a sudden, to his surprise, he saw Baba on the opposite platform with a few of the mandli. As soon as he laid his eyes on Baba, he quickly turned around and shut his eyes, remembering Baba's instruction. But at heart, he was so disappointed, with a heavy heart, that knowing how close Baba was, but obedient to his order, he went back to his hotel and was in desperately miserable situation all of that night. Towards dawn, however, there was a knock on his door, and he was amazed to find Chanji and a few of the close mandli. Chanji said he had been sent by Baba, who was very pleased with his implicit obedience at the train station, but wanted to know what this reasoned urge to go and purify himself in the Ganges was all about. You see, he had never told anybody, this was just something he had thought to do. After that, Chanji told him, go to the wall and knock on the wall 3 times, which he did. And to his astonishment, came 3 knocks in reply from the other side. Minu was in the Hotel Royal in room 13, while Baba was in the adjacent Hotel Regal in room 13. So even though Minu could not see him, he was blissfully happy to have Baba so close by. So a second story on obedience comes to mind, which took place in Mahabaleshwar in 1950, where Baba had called a meeting with the mandli. The meeting was held in a stable where Baba gestured to Vishnu to close the door after all had gathered. Seeing an elderly disciple, Gustaji, approaching, Vishnu held the door open. And due to this disobedience, 2 unwanted men snuck in and bowed down to Baba, which was disobeying him. But right away, so Baba's mood was spoiled. Arish pointed out the mistake. They apologized for disobeying him. But right away, he indicated, so Baba was angry. He rebuked Vishnu for holding that door open. And he asked one of the mandli to step up. But then he realized that he had been angry. He had lost his temper, which was not part of what he was what was to be adhered to at that time with him and the mandli. So because he got angry, he asked one of the mandli to step forward and slap him, which this unfortunate soul demonstrated very, very timidly. He just kind of tapped Baba. Baba immediately said, is this the way you punish someone? Then he turned to Minu and asked him to step forward and show how the slapping should be done. Demonstrating implicit obedience, Minu stepped up to the horror of all present, delivered a slap with full force. Baba immediately hugged him and applauded his obedience. And then on the topic of faith, this is one story I recall that happened in Madras, and which, when I heard, made a huge impression on me as a child. So this story takes place in Madras when Minu was there with his cousin Adi Dubash. And this was Adi's first meeting with Baba. Okay. I'll show you this one. Okay, so there's Adi Dubash sitting on the floor and Minu to Baba's right. So the story goes, when they were there, Baba often went in the afternoons to visiting different people in the area. And one of them happened to be, as it turned out, happened to be a cinema which was owned by the mayor of Madras. When they arrived at the cinema, instead of entering through the main door, Baba rapidly walked around the side of the building to a staircase which led to the door of a small room. Baba quickly climbed the stairs, opened the door, went in and sat on a single chair in the room, which was like a prayer room with various pictures of saints and holy ones. Upon seeing Baba thus seated, the owner was overcome with joy and prostrated at his feet in tearful surrender. The story goes that this gentleman had silently made a pact with God, unbeknownst to anyone, that someday, if he was worthy of the beloved's grace, God himself would appear and sit in that chair. I never tired of hearing these stories and life experiences of my father, which were narrated numerous times throughout my childhood, and which always left me with a sense of wonder and elation, deepening my own love and faith in beloved Baba. So to conclude, I will say that this is what I feel. Love, faith, obedience, surrender. These are the qualities of a true aspirant and seeker of God. If one has intense longing for God, his relentless search will inevitably lead him to the feet of his master. His implicit faith and obedience to the master's wishes finally culminates in total surrender. Mind you, this is no easy task and can only be possible when one has earned his grace. He then masterfully guides you out of the quagmire of your deeply rooted sanskars to help you overcome all the hurdles you put in your own path and finally sets you free. This was the destiny of my father Minu, a true God seeker. Parvardigar Meher Baba Ki Jai. I am now open to any questions anyone may have.
Please feel free to pose questions for Goher ji.
Goher has agreed to answer any questions that you might have, both from people who are on Zoom as well as the audience over here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask her. Goher, I might want to kick off a Q&A session with you.
Sure.
Having learned lessons from your father's life of discipleship, how do you implement those lessons in your life today?
Good question.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I did. Yes, Nosh, I did. Thank you. So faith, of course, is something that is nurtured when, through your childhood. And of course, with me, I was blessed to be born in the family that I was. And so faith has not been a difficult one for me. My faith has grown in Baba through the years, through my father, of course, initially as a child, hearing all his experiences. And I've just known from day one that Baba was God. I never had an issue with that. So my faith has only grown stronger. And of course, when meeting Baba, after meeting Baba, it has blossomed even more. And through the remaining years of my life afterwards, even after marriage and coming here and having family life of my own, through various ups and downs, if you will, the general hills and dales one traverses in life, it sometimes shakes your faith. Yeah. But in my case, I always have found that knowing Baba for who he is and having him in my life, that is what has gotten me through whatever I have been, I brought to myself, if you will. Because whatever you undergo in life, you bring to yourself, don't you? And so it gives you that awareness. How fortunate are we to be in Baba's orbit, to know all this, to be aware of it, just as you said, Nosh, in your talk earlier, that this is a huge blessing. And this is absolutely what has kept me on the level and to continue with life and more or less be an observer more than anything else. It has taught me to be an observer of life. And the more you are an observer, I think the easier life traverses, the easier your life progresses. Obedience, I was always obedient. No, even as a child, I was very introverted to begin with, and I still am in many ways. But so obedience has never been an issue with me. So I hope that answers your question.
Konna, are there any other questions? Is there any other question for anybody? For Goher? Yeah.
So, like, if you believe in Baba, right, and you are with many family members, and not all of them have a similar faith or belief, or even I myself am exploring myself, I'm not sure. So, what does Baba tell about people who, like, who don't believe in Baba, right? Generally, is there like, how do you, is there like guidance on that?
Goher, did you hear this question?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
That you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
His question is that there are members, there are one person in an entire family is a Baba lover while the others are not.
Uh-huh.
How does Baba have any guidance for how others can come into Baba's orbit or Baba's fold?
Yes.
Do you know of any guidance that Baba has given?
Yeah, so this is very true, even in my own family. Not everybody is an ardent Baba lover as I am, and I totally understand that because they haven't had the background and the life that I have lived. However, just being around me, in my close proximity, and hearing about Baba, every so often, I think has brought them, my children, my husband, has brought them to a certain level of knowing Baba for who he is and coming into his orbit. They have all traveled with me to Baba's tomb shrine in Mirabad, which is a great blessing. And I think that has also helped. But in the end, I think it is their individual journeys between them and Baba. That's what it comes down to in the end. I mean, you can try sometimes your utmost to guide, to counsel, to tell them of your, what should I say? To try and try to get them into Baba's orbit. But in the end, if their journey, if they're not ready to receive him in many ways, then that will happen only when the time is right. And you have to just leave it to Baba then. And then it's between them and Baba. So you do your best, yes. You try to talk about Baba, you give everything you have, you offer. But in the end, it is between them and Baba. That's what
Questions?
I have two participants.
Yeah. If you tell me, then I'll repeat it.
When did that journey start? How was it for her to gather all of these for us to be able to do?
The experiences of your father, at one point, did your spiritual journey start? Learning about the various different lessons in discipleship from your father?
Yes, I would say my early childhood at home was very natural and normal and, filled with Baba and my parents and the Baba meetings and all of that. But I think my true journey began after marriage and after I came here, because then I was on my own and I had to think for myself. I had to do things for myself to basically call on Baba from within and have him nurture me then from within to continue my life. So so I think in many ways it's been your what shall I say, your instinct, or your, as Baba says, rely upon your intuitive sense to let guide you, because that is his voice, that is him guiding you from within, and that's what I've learned to rely upon. So
a little bit to this gentleman's question.
Yeah.
No one comes to Goher Baba without his invitation.
Right.
When he invites you, you come and you become conscious of his divinity, and then he makes you conscious of your divinity. So I'll tell you a little story that when I met Meher Baba in 1965, I was sitting in his presence, and I had just come from attending the Third World Religions Conference, and wherever I went, they asked me, how can Meher Baba say that he's God in human form? So I took that opportunity of asking Meher Baba. Baba, among the many questions that people asked me, I was able to answer them with your grace, but this question I could not. So Baba, I asked him that question, how can Meher Baba say that he's God in human form? And Baba just threw up his hands, giving an indication, what a simple question. And then he became very serious, and he said, Naosherwan, you are God in human form, but you are not conscious of your divinity. I am conscious of my divinity, and I make you conscious of your divinity. And how do I do that? I give you the gift of conviction. That is my job, of giving you the gift of conviction. And we're all gathered here because we have been given that gift of conviction and awakened to his divinity. So how do we keep that awareness alive within us? Is by remembering his name, repeating his name, and thinking of him at every moment that we possibly can. That is the talisman of following Meher Baba.
I have one
Yes,
raised
sir.
hand, Naji.
I'd like to touch upon surrender, as was noted by Goher.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, in those moments how do you overcome those moments when surrender is strained?
Goher, did you hear this question?
Something about surrender, but I didn't hear it clearly.
Goher? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Goher, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is she saying yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Goher, the question here is that you mentioned the word surrender in your talk.
Yes.
How, Danny, how do you overcome? Can't hear. You touched on the subject of surrender in your talk. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
His question is that how do you overcome moments of strain in your surrender when you're on the path and you surrender? How do you overcome those strained moments of surrender?
Strained moments. Okay. So you in life you come across so many different hurdles, so many different stressful situations, whatever. And at first, being human, you try to combat them as best you can on a human level. So you try this and you try that and you try every which way you can to overcome them, but nothing works. In the end, you come to the realization that the only way to get out of this is to surrender it to Baba. And so you lay it all at his feet. But mind you, when you do this, you have to have the implicit faith that Baba will take over and resolve your situation. So when you surrender completely, you completely lay it at Baba's feet. And then you don't have it. It's a very liberating feeling, because I have personally experienced that in my own life. After going through a lot of stressful times and trying this and trying that, nothing worked to change things. Finally, I just left it at his feet. And I said, Baba, I'm going to just live my life from day to day as best I can, doing what I do for the rest of the people that surround me, my family, whatever. And then whatever happens, I will take it as your will. So that whether it's good, bad, or indifferent makes no difference to me. Whatever happens, I will take it as your will. And that's how, when you totally surrender and you have that implicit faith, he absolutely has to take over. And he will do the worrying for you. He will do the problem solving for you. And that has absolutely worked in my case. So I hope that has helped.
I
Wow,
have
sir.
one raised hand. Naji.
Handing it over all to him as per his will. Whatever happens is as per his will.
Naji, I have one
So,
raised hand.
Goher, thank you so much for a scintillating talk
Not at all.
and answering all the questions. And I guess everyone is satisfied with the answers.
I thank you for
Haji.
Naosherwan, I have a question. Naosherwan, I have a question. They can't hear me, Goher.
They can't hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you,
There's
Martha.
somebody who
know.
wants to ask a question.
I know. Hi, Goher.
Hi,
He's on
hi.
Zoom.
Ask away, ask away.
One moment.
Naosherwan, I'm asking Goher a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Goher,
Yes.
this is Marta. And
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, Jai Baba, Goher, through your adult life,
Yes.
have you gone through a period where the part of you that you were recognized started to change and you went into these aspects that were kind of dark and not so pleasing to maybe Baba, and you give it to Baba, but they kind of keep coming back, these parts of myself that I don't recognize. Have you ever experienced that? And if you have, how did that, what did you do with that?
I can't really talk to that, Marta, because by dark experiences, you mean, have I done things to displease myself or to be regretting later on? Is that what you're saying? Is that what
Yes, like not so loving or not so
Yeah.
compassionate or not so considerate, like that.
In all honesty, I cannot say that I have, because my relationship with most people is most affable, most as loving as possible from my end. So I have not personally experienced that side of life, to honestly answer your question. But if it were to, I would then again leave it all to Baba and say, okay, this is bothering me. Why do I keep thinking these thoughts? Or why does this come to me so often? I do not have the answer. Therefore, I just leave it to you, and you tell me what I should do or how I should react or how I should resolve this thing. And again, having laid it at his feet, Marta, if you have the implicit faith, which is then very necessary for anything to turn around, then and only then will you see a difference. So yeah, that's the best way I think I can answer your question. I hope it has helped.
Yes, go here. Thank you.
Okay, my dear. Lovely to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you, Goher.
Thank
And
you.
now we will all break for lunch. Lunch will be served in a few moments. We will.
One question, please. Can you please repeat what the message that Eric gave you? I believe it's awareness is great help in my work.
Yes.
That's it?
No, the exact sentence is awareness is a great help to me in my work. Yes, yes.